It was good, y'all. It's your boy JD6 here. I'm with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man. Welcome to the KC Sports Authority podcast. Keegan Russell and Christopher Tenpenny here with you with some more content to bring to you today. There's a lot of stuff going on in the sports world that we are just diving into. It feels like every day. But first, before we dive into this, which is talking about the Royals' corresponding 40-man roster moves with the additions of their free agent targets that they acquired. First off, I want to give a big shout out to all of our followers, listeners, subscribers, watchers, all of that. Thank you. Thank you so much. We just hit our goal this last weekend. Over the weekend, surpassed 250 plus subscribers and 40,000 views here on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for doing that. We really appreciate the support you guys have been giving us. We're very grateful for all that support, and there's still plenty of fun stuff to come in the podcast. For those of you that checked out last week's episodes, the KU episode, you know that we're going to try and get 3 shirts for free giveaway to a couple of our listeners. That is coming. We'll be doing another shirt order here soon. So those of you that fulfilled the requirements for that, just be on the lookout. We'll reach out to you to get that. As far as the rest of you guys, again, thank you so much for helping us get over 250 and 40,000. That's great. Our goal was 250 before Christmas, and we did that. Next challenge is 300 by the end of the year. So we've got about 11 days to get to 300. We're already at 270, so just need another 30. So like Chris mentioned in our last episode, in the Chiefs episode, share it with one friend. All we're asking is to go find one person you can share the podcast with. And if everybody did that, we'd be at 550 tomorrow. So all we're asking is one person, just mention it to them. Somebody you think that would like our content to go check it out. Hit that subscribe button. If you are watching for the first time, again, welcome to the KC Sports Authority podcast. Hit that subscribe button because I think you are going to like the content we bring you. We got Chiefs, Royals, KU, CJ, who's not here today. Him and I have some betting content lined up to potentially get out this weekend with some big Christmas Day football and basketball games coming up. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. All right, Chris, we have a flurry of Royals moves. We've already covered the free agency additions the last couple of weeks, the last week or so. A lot of great feedback from the listeners. A lot of people check those episodes out. We had Jack Johnson on of Locked On Royals to break down some of those moves. And what we were left with, though, was a few spots on the Royals 40-man roster that were going to need to be updated. And since we've talked last about these Royals moves, they have finally made some of these moves. So the roster does sit at 40. So I'm going to kick it over to you and just kind of share with us what were those moves that the Royals did this week to get us from that 42 to 43 back down to the 40-man roster we have currently.
Yeah, we just wanted to run through them because we know how hard it sometimes is to keep up with all these player movements going around all the time, seemingly in baseball, especially when, those moves may be on the back burner for a lot of you because it is still football season. Chiefs, one more win away from winning the AFC West again. So just thought it'd be nice to have a place to where you can find all of them. So I'm going to go through all 4 that really happened for when they announced, guys, because they announced Seth Lugo, at the middle of last week. And before they did that, they traded Taylor Clark, who had a couple bright spots, but overall wasn't a great reliever during his time in Kansas City. They shipped him off to Milwaukee, brought in 2 prospects, Ryan Brady, Cam Devaney. You don't really know too much about them other than their good minor league depth. The Brady kid pitched well in Double-A, has an electric fastball, and the Devaney kid had an 800 OPS at Triple-A, which sounds like close, but seems like he's more of a 4A kind of player. So that's just some good depth that you got for Taylor Clark, which kind of blew my mind that they were able to get, better than lottery, 2 players that were better than lottery tickets for him. So that's something. And then when they announced, Chris Stratton, their corresponding move was they traded Edward Olivares to Pittsburgh. They got a second baseman who's in single A. That literally is a lottery ticket. The kid's super talented. He's like fast. He's like 6'2", lefty, strikes out a lot, doesn't hit for a good average in single A. So we'll see. We'll see if that one pans out, but still it's a kind of a good move to get something for Olivares. Then
I think they also moved Olivares to a team that could actually use him. The Pirates are a young team that need an outfielder to bring some potential offense. I know he's had his struggles, but when he is hitting, he's a pretty solid bat in that lineup.
Yeah, it's just he can. It's weird because they do have Jack Sawinski. For those that are familiar with the Pirates, he's a good left-hander. So I think a platoon platoon there with all of ours, and Sawinski's kind of what the Pirates are thinking because they brought Kutch back, they got Brian Reynolds, so they actually do have some depth. So at least all of ours will maybe go to a team that doesn't know about his defensive struggles, but I'm sure they're going to find out very quickly. I just like getting something for the guy, like I was surprised that the Royals got more for Clark than they did for all of ours because one can hit and one had a 6 ERA, but that just shows you how important the defense is in the league right now. So all of ours no longer on the team. Then they announced Chris Stratton, the reliever, Michael Wacha, and they got something for Jonathan Heasley. Traded him to the Orioles for another lottery ticket pitcher. So that's something. I thought Heasley was a easy DFA candidate. Just really never seemed like he had the stuff. He had like 2 or 3 good starts, all up and buns ever since. And finally, they actually did have to DFA Max Castillo, who, if you'll remember, was acquired in the Whit Merrifield trade. Pitched a little bit for the Royals the last year and a half. They DFA'd him in order to announce Hunter Renfroe. So now that was the only one they really weren't able to get any compensation back, but they were able to announce all 4 of their recent moves and move off of a few guys that, let's be honest, there was a little bit of upside maybe on a couple of these guys, but for the most part, moves that make this team much better going into 2024.
Yeah, and I'll pull up the 40-man here in a second to kind of go through it with you guys so you can have a visual. So if you're watching on YouTube here, you'll be able to see this. If not, if you're listening on Spotify or just catching bits and pieces of this later, obviously you can go to the Royals website and check out the 40-man, but we'll pull that up here. But I think the only one fans might really have questions on, and I don't even know if they care that much about it, is just the Max Castillo one, because that was a guy that, because of how well-known Whit Merrifield was, that was one of the obvious pieces we got back. Didn't really do a whole lot of great last year. Had a few start spots here, a few bullpen sessions. He's got the stuff. He's got the potential, just hasn't pieced it together at the MLB level. But DFA'd him. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if he passes through waivers and he ends up still in the system. But he seemed that as I was going through the 40-man the other day, he seemed like one of the other pitchers that might be the odd man out as far as just opportunities and positions there. Any of these players that we moved on from surprising to you, or was there anybody else on the 40-man you thought might be the guy to go?
I don't think any of these guys were surprised. I was kind of hoping all of them would move off. Again, as I said earlier, the compensation we got back for Taylor Clark really did surprise me because you got 2 guys that, have some injuries or have good years in the minors, could be elevated onto this 40-man roster and appear in the show this year. Like, I don't know how many 6 ERA guys you're giving that up for. So maybe that's just Brewers knew that they peaked, and that maybe the progression isn't going to be quite as much as I'm hopeful for. But that was the biggest shock for me. Everything else seemed pretty on point. Maybe Dairon Blanco. I think he's a trade candidate to someone like the Rays, or the Rays lost Margot. Like, there's a couple teams like that I think would take Blanco for cash or a lottery ticket. But other than that, I think they hit the right set of guys to move off of.
Yep. So let's run through it here. Again, they're at 40 currently. There's 23 pitchers and there's 17 position players. So as we're going here at the top, this is the combined starters and relievers. 23, that's a pretty decent amount. Some teams flirt with splitting their roster 20-20. I think it's always good to have a few extra pitchers just because injuries always pop up. Now, as you guys will notice going through this list here, there's 2 guys that are injured that are currently on the 40-man that will at some point get moved to the 60-day injured list. That, of course, is the new guy down here, Kyle Wright, who will miss the entire year, like we mentioned a couple episodes ago. He'll be on that to start at least for sure. Jake Brentz was just coming off of the injured list, and they added him back on instead of I can't remember the other guy they DFA'd over him, but they chose to keep him. And then now I'm blanking again. Bubic. Yeah, Chris Bubic, I believe, is going to be starting on the injured list. So potentially 2 spots to fill there. But as we're going through the 40-man, who are some of the guys that you see on this list that might not be guaranteed an opening day spot, but some pitchers that stand out to you as potential bullpen pieces, or maybe a guy that could overtake a Jordan Lyles for that 5th rotation spot?
Yeah, I mean, Lynch is obviously the number one guy that I think that there may be a real competition between him and Lyles. Now, I'm interested to see what Lynch looks like in the bullpen. I know people aren't talking about that as much as I think they should, because if the velocity upticks at all a little bit, and with the lack of lefties, I mean, you have Brent's coming off injuries, and he didn't look very good last time we saw Brent's, who was giving up a grand slam in Seattle was the last time he pitched in like 2021 or something. And then you've got Will Smith, who's a little older, another lefty. Like that's basically your left-handed depth. I guess Josh Taylor, but I expect him to probably be off this 40-man roster before the season starts. So I think Lynch is interesting. I think he's going to make the opening day roster. Now, whether it's as a starter, as a bullpen, is yet to be seen. But I really like what he could potentially provide with no pressure as opposed to previous years. And outside of that, I mean, I think Alec Marsh will continue to get some run as a starter, but ultimately be in the bullpen. John McMillan, who I know not a lot of people are super familiar with, he rocketed through the rankings last year. Was really impressive in Double-A. Got a cup of coffee to end the year. Through 4 innings, he only gave up 1 hit. It was a home run, but he struck out 8 over those 4 innings, walked 0 pitchers. Obviously, super, super small sample size, the smallest of sample sizes. But after you saw what he did in rookie ball, single A, Double-A, and then all of a sudden, had 4 pretty quality outings in the majors, he's a guy that I think it could shock some people that I expect to make on the opening day roster. But that's about it for the starters and bullpen. Like the Sauer kid, I don't know a ton about. The kid they took for the Yankees in the Rule 5. I would expect he's going to get a lot of opportunity in spring, because if he doesn't make the 40-man, or if he doesn't make the opening day roster, he goes back to the Yankees. But I don't know a ton about him, other than there's a lot of MLB experts that know the Yankees system that really like that pick by the Royals. So that's as long as other people like that, like that's good enough for me as a starting point.
Yeah, I think the couple names that stand out to me the most, Will Klein, I think, is one to keep an eye out. He's been in an organization a couple years now. They really like him. He's got high velocity. Been trying to prep him to kind of be one of those back into the bullpen guys. He's kind of worked his way through the different levels of minor league ball. I like him being on this 40-man. I think he got added at some point last year too. So I think he'll get some look this year. One thing I did notice as I'm going through this, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say project guys, but guys that just need to prove them. A Jonathan Bolin, who's been in this organization several years, has good size, good stuff, but is back and forth between starter, reliever. And as I look through this, a lot of these guys kind of fit that mold. And Alec Marsh has starting capability, but it hasn't been great when he's been stretched out. Could be out of the bullpen. If you scroll down here, Angel Zerpa, another guy we've already seen bits and pieces of, hasn't been great as a starter, has a little bit as a reliever. So I see a lot of guys that have potential to be good potential bullpen pieces, depending on how they pan out. But the other one I think Royals fans can look out for down the road is Anthony Veneziano. I always say his name wrong. Veneziano.
Yeah.
Anthony V, he's been a guy that's kind of been rising through the ranks in the organization last couple of years as well. Good size, 6'5", good frame, another lefty. Because like you said, there's not a lot of strong lefties in this group. So some of these other lefties are going to, at some point, find their way into the rotation. But nice pieces there. Wouldn't be shocked if the Royals still look to go and find another bullpen piece as like a non-roster invitee or something for spring ball. Let's go to the offensive side here and the position players. Obviously the big thing that stands out so far is that there's only 2 catchers on the 40-man. We're pretty positive that's going to change at some point. Fermin and Salvador Perez. Do you go into MJ Melendez as your emergency catcher?
No.
Maybe not. You probably want somebody else there. But here's where we're sitting there. Infielders, you got Garcia, the addition Hampson that we just had. We've talked about could play infield, could also play outfield, center field. Nick Lofton, another guy that's a little bit of versatility that we didn't really see at the major league level much last year at all, but is kind of knocking on the doorstep. Just needs to find some space to play him. Our usual guys, Massey, Pasquantino, Prado, a guy who's probably on the outside looking in for roster spots. Samad Taylor, same kind of thing. I do like with this infielder group, I see a lot of versatility as far as guys that can play multiple spots across the diamond and in the outfield, but no real surprises there, I think. Outfielders, This is probably the one that might have the potential to change depending on, if they keep 4 or 5 outfielders, depending on what you categorize Melendez as, and if Kyle Isbell lands the everyday center fielder. But Gentry, Blanco, and Drew Waters are 3 names just to kind of keep your eye on. Gentry being one of the younger guys in that group probably would be harder to keep through the 40-man by designating him. So he's probably one you see on there. Blanco's the guy that we've talked about for the last couple of weeks, is one that would be easy to DFA or move to another team that needs a bench outfielder that can come in, play good defense, and be a sprinter around the diamond. Any other surprises to you or guys that stand out on the position player side that are on this 40-man?
No, I think overall that it's a good group. I think Blanco will probably be moved off depending on, as we continue to see non-roster invitees get invited to camp and who stands out there depth wise. If anyone makes the team, if any trades are made. Still, like I know JJ said that basically they wanted to be done by Christmas, and I think with the announcement of all the signees and the corresponding moves, I think they are done as far as like what they're actively trying to add. I think that's now, are they still on the phone seeing who's interested in Drew Waters? Are they still seeing like is Prado can be packaged with anyone? I know you're not going to get as much as maybe we once thought we could get for those guys, but there's a little bit of a roster jam in that regard to where like, okay, Nick Prado is what 20, 26 years old, and he's going to be either AAA or behind Vinny. Like I don't love that. Same with Waters. You look at Renfroe, probably MJ and Isbell as a starting outfielder with Velasquez splitting time with Salvi at DH and Fermin getting some of those reps too when Salvi's DHing. Like, what do you do with Waters at that point? And Hampson can play outfield. Like, there's just still much of a roster crunch with these young guys that you would think moves would still be going because it's tough and it's not like it's never been done before, but having a lot of 25, 26-year-olds who were formerly number 1, number 2 first round, second round draft picks, a lot of promise, having them sit the bench. I don't know what that does for the team. Now, are they good depth? Are they guys that an organization that doesn't have a lot of depth that maybe just by default you have to keep around? Probably going to be the case, but man, it feels like some of these spots are getting taken and not too many guys to fill them.
There will be some healthy competition at a couple of these spots in the off season in spring ball, because you do have, like you said, 5 or 6 guys that are all kind of bunched in there there could be a spot for them, but right now they're probably on the outside looking in. Competition, I always think, is good because it pushes guys that really want the spot to exceed and basically force the Royals' hand to keep him there. But I think the last question, kind of going into the next couple of weeks is what do they do at that third catcher spot? It's very unlikely they start the year with only 2 catchers on the 40-man because both of those would be on the active everyday roster. And if one of them goes down, who do you bring up? They had Logan Porter on the 40-man, designated him for assignment, but he's still in the organization. So he an internal candidate. They've got a couple of prospects, Blake Mitchell, way too young, probably not going to see anything on him. Carter Jensen, another catcher, younger guy, of course. They don't really have any of those other guys in the prospects currently on the roster that could slide in there. But Logan Porter being one of them. Maybe they go out. I don't know if Cale Imhoff is still on the team, but again, none of these guys that really stand out to you as a third option. So I would expect something to happen there, whether it's just adding a third veteran that, is comfortable being that AAA guy, or if a team called and they were willing to move on from Fermin, then they probably signed another veteran catcher to sit behind Salvi. That's probably the only other question mark over the next few weeks is what they do there. And then who knows, it might be after January when we see something there. But any other thoughts on this 40-man before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, I think I just wanted to give a quick breakdown. Again, there's still some minor moves like, maybe you do get rid of Josh Taylor, Dairon Blanco, and add Porter back up. I think that'd be kind of weird to do that early just because you DFA'd Porter, so they're clearly trying to see what else they can do. But I think as far as fireworks this offseason, I think the Royals have reached them. I think now it's just going to be speculation talking about if this team can compete for the division and just kind of seeing what this final product looks like once April comes around.
Yep, I agree. So over the next few weeks, we might not have as much Royals content as we had in the last 2 weeks because this is when everything's happening.
Right.
But throughout the rest of the offseason into spring training, we'll dive into position battles. We'll talk about, who are our selections for the final opening day roster, the rotation, bullpen roles, utility, outfielder, infielder, guys coming off the bench, all that. We'll get into all that over the next couple of weeks, kind of slowly but surely. But yeah, it's just great to kind of talk Royals baseball here in the off season. It's not a bunch of frustration, questions, disappointment. It's actual excitement. As of the time you guys are watching this, you can already go out and start buying tickets for the season. Season ticket packages on sale, single game ticket packages on sale. If you guys have seen the graphic, it's pretty safe to say those that are on the graphic are probably not getting moved now, because I don't think they would put that out as their promotion for tickets without consulting the.
It was interesting on that. For those that you haven't seen, it was the 7 guys they brought in, the 6 signees plus Nick Anderson, they got in the Jackson Kowar trade, for those that you forgot. And then the 6 players they had built around it was Bobby, Vinny, Michael, Reagans, Singer, and who am I missing? I think there was one more.
Did you say Salvi?
Yeah, they had Salvi, Bobby, Vinny, Garcia, Reagans, and Singer. Maybe I did miss Salvi somehow, but those were the 6 they had built around, and I think those are the correct 6. I think those are the 6 that quote unquote passed the evaluation.
Vinny was on there. I want to say, okay, I'm looking at it now.
Yes, Pasquantino, Salvador Perez, Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., Cole Reagans, and Brady Singer. Singer's the only one that maybe you can argue, someone like Freddie Fermin or someone like Velasquez technically passed a little better, but come on, you're not going to put one of those guys who maybe long-term don't project.
No Michael Massey, no Drew Waters.
They didn't pass. They didn't pass the and they don't have the resume that some of a guy like Brady has, and then they didn't have as good of a year as the other 5 on that list. I hope Massey and Waters get it together, but they don't deserve to be on that promo.
Yeah. So there you go. Opening day tickets now available. Go check those out. I think it's actually going to be a very fun opening day. Should be pretty packed. Chris, are you going to make your way up here for opening day?
I don't know yet. It's still, it's a long ways away. We're still 4 months out a little bit at this point, but definitely going to try.
All right, perfect. Well, guys, that'll wrap up this one. Again, thank you for helping us get over our threshold of 250 subscribers, 40,000 views. Really hope we can get to 300 by the end of December here, so about the next week and a half. So continue to help us out, support us. You can find us Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at KCSA Pod. Again, for those that are going to be a part of the T-shirt eligibility, we'll reach out to you guys and get that taken care of for you soon. Again, other stuff to check out. We got plenty of KU football stuff coming up. We've got their bowl game next week. We'll have that game preview. I'll have an episode diving into the KU football recruiting. Now that the signing day has come and passed, they've got a very strong recruiting class we'll get into. Chris and CJ have plenty of Chiefs stuff, and we might try and do some more supplemental, shorter Chiefs episodes just to dive into a couple things there. Like I said, CJ and I are hoping to have some great sports betting content to come out this weekend to kind of give you some Christmas Day bets to check out. So be sure to check us out. You can find Chris over on Twitter at 10penny88. Even though the Royals might be slowing down here, there's plenty of stuff to get into with the off season and baseball. I know you're always down to talk that. I'm at Keeganator_11. Getting a little bit more active than I usually am on Twitter, but if you guys want to hit us up for anything, share any takes you have with us. If you guys have ideas for episodes or things you'd like to hear us talk about on any topic, feel free to reach out to us and we'll try and include that in there. If you guys have any questions, we'll try and answer those. But that'll do it for this one. Again, thank you guys, and we will catch you in the next episode.